The Scramble for Africa is an infamous defining moment for Africa. The repercussions resulted in poverty and civil wars. This event, sparked by a meeting in 1884, changed the course of Africa and plays a major part of what country you are from in Africa today. But imagine a world where this did not happen. What if the Scramble for Africa did not occur? That is what we'll discuss today on Green Click. By the way, be a friend and subscribe, click the notification button to get alerts, and like the video to help us make more videos you love about our amazing continent. Let's dive in. We highly encourage you research the events of the Scramble for Africa. But for the purpose of this video, we'll give a brief and bare bones breakdown of the event. The Scramble for Africa took place after the Long Depression in Europe. Leopold II claimed the whole country of Congo to be his own property and reaped the natural resources for his own wealth. This in turn had England, France, Spain, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, and Germany gather and have a meeting in which they charted out which African regions would belong to the respective nations. Upon execution, these European nations were able to mine the African nations of their resources and trade with each other, making them rich while keeping the locals poor. They were able to overpower the African nations due to their advancement in warfare technology. At the height of the colonization, only Liberia and Ethiopia were independent countries. The result ended in borders being created by foreigners, hence 90% of the African countries we know today. Eventually, after the World War, African countries started to become independent and cut themselves off from the European superpowers. The Scramble for Africa affected the world, and Europe was able to build wealth, and Africa was left to build what they had with the rubble of exploitation. Millions of Africans were enslaved, thousands were killed, countless individuals were scarred. Leopold II amputated the limbs of anyone who refused to mine rubber. In other parts of Africa, armies of 300 could overpower an army of 1,000 men due to technological advancements. With that cleared out of the way, what would happen if the Scramble for Africa never occurred? While keeping it strict to the event, slavery would still have happened. However, one would have to ponder how trade would have worked. What would the Africans back then have requested for in exchange for the natural resources it had? Eventually, a mutual respect would have been formed between Africa and the rest of the world, as integration would still occur. On the other hand, attempted conquest would still have happened, and the result of that would be anyone's guess. The major change would be the countries of Africa. Due to the Scramble for Africa, tribes were thrown together and had to become nations, and the effects are still felt today in nations like Nigeria, for example, where there are some tribal grumblings between Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa. The names of these countries would also be very different. Cameroon, Angola, and various other names were derived by foreigners naming the country. Let us not forget the influence that would not have happened if the Scramble for Africa did not happen. Majority of the Western African nations are influenced by the French. Southern Africa is influenced by the English and Germans, and you have areas like Libya being influenced by the Italians. African Americans would most likely be optimistic about returning to Africa due to the different direction the economy would have taken. Talking about economy, Africa would have a completely different economical outlook that it has today. Established wealth from centuries and trading could have turned the continent into a global power. We cannot say if corruption would still be rampant or if Africa would compete with the rest of the world in terms of quality of life and human advancements though. The population of Africa would have been much more higher than it is today, as Africans were slaughtered during the conquest. There would not be as many white Africans as there are today, and many African artifacts would be rare outside the continent, boosting the tourism sector of Africa. On the other hand, Africa may not have thrived as we mentioned. Tribal warfares could have put the continent in constant turmoil, and wealth mismanagement from corruption as it is today could have been the norm. But we will never know. There's probably so much more that would or would not have happened if the Scramble did not take place. And if you can think of a scenario that was not mentioned in the video, please let us know below in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say. If you'd like to be informed when we roll out new videos, give us a like to help us with the YouTube algorithm. Share this with a friend and drop a comment if you disagree or would like to request a video. Till then, brothers and sisters, have a nice day.